Welcome to the verse-by-verse study of the book of Proverbs. We begin chapter 17 today. Each of these passages for today is going to focus on having a healthy heart. Let's take a look at verse 1. Better a dry crust with peace and quiet than a house full of feasting with strife. This, as you recall, is a repeated theme. Better to have a modest home of love and peace than a rich house full of hatred and bickering. Peace is so important for our well-being. In fact, research tells us much of the stress for today is a result of lost quiet time. For example, many Americans suffer from what psychologists call or have labeled FOMO, fear of missing out, which is a constant desire, a need to want to stay connected via our many devices and social media connections. As a result, there's never any downtime. We remain in a state of anxiety. Both scripture and science tells us that silence and peace give us an opportunity for a meaningful mental rest, which literally allows our brain to recharge. Scientists have confirmed what Proverbs has always been teaching. When we turn off the busy noise, we begin to appreciate the present and focus on our many blessings, the issues that really matter to us, and we regain perspective. Scientists call this process cultivation of mindfulness, which reduces stress and brings peace. This proverb is encouraging us to build a home that is a sanctuary for peace. Next, we have a prudent servant will rule over a disgraceful son and will share the inheritance as one of the family. This is a general statement that sometimes a faithful long-term employee that has proven to be trustworthy and diligent and he likely could be named as a trustee over the family business and property of the deceased person's wealth, rather than giving that responsibility to a lazy, untrustworthy, destructive behavior son. Next, the crucible for silver and the furnace for gold, but the Lord tests the heart. As you know, our heart and our motivation are tested when you and I are under pressure, when the heat is on. In the same way, gold and silver are revealed and refined in the heat of a crucible or furnace. Challenges can help us grow in character and in wisdom, or challenges can allow our bitterness to grow, our choice. A wicked person listens to deceitful lips. A liar pays attention to a destructive tongue. What and who we listen to is important to God, because again, it influences our heart and our character, which dictate our actions and our attitude. Next, we have a warning. Whoever mocks the poor shows contempt for their maker. Whoever gloats over disaster will not go unpunished. How we treat and view others is important to God. Jesus said, "Whatever you did for one of the least of these, you did for me." To mock the poor means to look down upon. And to gloat means that we're pointing a finger and taking some perverse pleasure in other people's misfortune, which makes them feel superior. That is a person that lacks compassion in their heart. Children's children, meaning grandchildren, are a crown to the aged, to the grandparents. And parents are the pride of their children. Again, as a general rule, when there's God's love in that home, there's this beautiful bond that can stretch across 3 generations. Here the verse speaks of the unique joy that grandparents have towards their grandkids, and also that special love and bond that kids have for their mom and dad. This bond, this special kind of love, is God ordained and designed to give us a glimpse of the type of love that God has for us. Next, Eloquent lips, meaning wise words, are unsuited to, meaning do not come from, a godless fool. How much worse lying lips to a ruler? Again, wisdom comes from God. The godless, by definition, do not speak God's wisdom. And a true leader should be a person that can be trusted. Next, another general statement. A bribe is seen as a charm by the one who gives it. They think success will come at every turn. The author is pointing out that the purpose of a dishonest bribe is to get something in return, to create an obligation. I do this for you, and the expectation is you do something for me. There's this entanglement or obligation. But for the honest heart, there is no such obligation, no entanglements, no type of baggage. Whoever would foster love covers over an offense, but whoever repeats the matter separates close friends. Or we could say it another way in the ESV or the New Living Translation. Whoever covers an offense seeks love, but he who repeats a matter separates close friends. Love prospers when a fault is forgiven, but dwelling on it separates close friends. This proverb is about the power of forgiveness. There's 147 scripture verses regarding the subject of forgiveness. Why so many? Because God knows that unforgiveness is a cancer in our hearts. We carry around the weight and hurt of these jagged rocks from our past. And God knows that forgiveness will yield a healthy heart. Forgiveness means we do not allow the past to define and control us. We shift our focus forward on what we are becoming rather than backwards on what we're overcoming. We all have hurts. We've all been wronged, treated unfairly, betrayed, even abused. But God does not want us to live with a heart that's full of bitterness, sadness, and anger and insecurity. That's why he commanded us, get rid of all bitterness, rage, and anger. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as Christ God forgave you. The biblical word for forgiveness means literally to let go. Let go and give it to God. It's an act of both grace and trust and courage. Trust that God will administer justice. And that, family, begins the healing process, which begins to set us free from the burden of bitterness. But forgiveness is sometimes misunderstood. First, forgiveness is not conditional. It does not depend on the other person's behavior, whether that be an apology or any action on their part. If it did, the other person would be in control. Choosing a forgiving heart is all about you and a loving God. Second, we need to remember that forgiveness is not about emotions. Forgiveness does not mean we have to acknowledge, condone, reconcile, or even like the other person. And also, forgiveness is not pretending that the hurt didn't happen. And when God calls us to love our neighbor and even love our enemies, he's not talking about emotions. God is simply telling us that we should choose to treat others like we wish to be treated. Forgiveness is actually an attitude adjustment. It is a focus on the future rather than dwelling in the past. Forgiveness also means we don't all of a sudden begin to trust this person. Trust is earned over time. Biblical forgiveness does not mean that we put ourselves back in harm's way. Not until that trust is fully earned and restored. The last verse for today, again, is comparing the wise to the fool. Recall, a fool is that person that chooses to reject God and his wisdom. Verse 10 says, a rebuke impresses a discerning, meaning a godly wise person, more than 100 lashes a fool. A wise person is someone that listens to and considers corrective feedback, even if it's delivered as a blunt rebuke. They do not allow their emotions nor their pride to blind them to sound corrective advice. We shall close there and finish up chapter 17 next week. Until then, may God bless you. Bless you and your family with both grace and peace. Aloha.